Hello and welcome to the Art of Selling Online Courses. We are here to share winning strategies and secret hacks from top performers in the online course industry. My name is John Ainsworth and today's guest is Jack Bourne. He's the most well-known as the founder of Deadline Funnel, a software tool that helps thousands of online business owners make more sales through the power of authentic urgency. He's a highly respected marketing expert who's been working in the online product and software space for over 2 decades. I'd followed Jack and listened to stuff from him from I don't even know, maybe 10 years ago, way before we ever talked. So today we're going to be talking about deadlines, why they matter, what kind of difference they make, how to use them ethically, and how to use them in your funnels. Now, before we dive into the interview, I've got an important question for you. Do you own a course or an authority site? If you do, did you know there's a short list of techniques that can help you double to quintuple your revenue? There's 8 techniques that my team uses to help online course creators grow their revenue. And on average, they grow by 428%. So if you want to find out more about which technique is important for you, which ones you're missing at the moment, and find out what is that you should be doing and what order you should do it, then go fill out the survey at courseprofitreport.com. Fill it in, it's 10 questions, and my team will go through and create a personalized profit report for you, for your business, and show you what it is that you need to do in order to increase your revenue. Now, back to the show. Jack, thanks so much for coming on, man.
I'm really excited to be here.
Nice. I know I talked to you about this before, but I remember listening to stuff from you and going through stuff from you from back when you were working with Perry Marshall and the Tactical Triangle. How long ago would that have been? How long ago did you come up with that?
Yeah, that was in the range of 2009, 2010. A book of Perry Marshall's that I highly recommend is applicable to anyone, whether you sell an online course or whatever you're selling, even if it's a brick and mortar. 80-20 sales and marketing. It's a really great book. So I get nothing for recommending it, but I think everyone will enjoy it. In chapter 6, that's a really good introduction to the Tactical Triangle. And Perry talks about how I came up with this idea. And then there's another chapter later in the book that is kind of interesting about how I got to be on Perry's team. And it had to do with sort of a live application process where you had to compete. There were different goalposts that you had to hit. And so that was an interesting process going through that to join Perry's team. But I was already an entrepreneur at that point, and I really wasn't looking for something, but the opportunity to join someone's team who I felt really had impressed me and was a thought leader and someone that I looked up to. I had all of his books on my bookshelf and is really well connected in the marketing world. And so I really looked up to him and still do. And so it just seemed like an awesome opportunity to work with someone. And so I jumped at the opportunity and I won the opportunity to be on his team and worked with him for 6 years. I didn't plan on working with him for 6 years, but just we got along really, really well. He's just a super, super awesome guy. But yeah, while I was there, I developed this concept called the Tactical Triangle. And just like the short version of this, a lot of people just focus on traffic and conversion. Like the old formula is you get your traffic, you convert the traffic, there you go, day's done. However, there's another component of this, which is really, really important, which is your lifetime value, your average order value. So I came up with a third leg of this triangle, or turned it into a triangle. And that is, I call that the economics. So that could be everything from bump offers, upsells, downsells, which we typically call your average order value. So when someone is going through that transaction process from beginning to end, and when they actually consider themselves to be finished and they're finished with the process, regardless of what they've said yes or no to, that is the average order value across, if you average that out over 100 or 1,000 people. But then there's other things like the lifetime value. Do you have subscription revenue? Do you have, higher ticket offers? How much is a client worth to you? So very simple math. I'm not going to do math publicly. Everyone says don't do math, while you're on a podcast or while you're on a video interview. But conceptually, if I can afford to spend $200 to acquire a client and someone else can afford only to spend $50 to acquire a client, then I'm at a huge advantage. There's different types of media platforms that I can advertise on that my competitor can't. I'm going to be able to outspend and outbid, and so there's a whole bunch of other things. And even outside of paid advertising, I can pay my affiliates and my partners, higher percentages if I want to. I can, go into other types of media buys, which are not pay-per-click. I can hire team members who might be copywriters. I mean, there's all sorts of things that you start to be able to build into your business that, if I'm hiring smarter copywriters and if I'm hiring ad specialists and better graphic designers, and we're making smart decisions, then everything in my machinery for converting people should get better. And so it's one of these virtuous cycles. So instead of circling the drain, it's a virtuous cycle, and you're constantly improving with each revolution of the circle. And so that's the tactical triangle in a nutshell.
Nice. And it's one of the things that we always talk to people about, is that if you've already got sales, you've already got an audience, you've got an email list, you're making sales, and you want to figure out which step do you improve, we always say start with the economics, because it's actually the easiest one to improve. It's like if you add an order bump and you add an upsell, it's like it doesn't take very much time, but it increases the amount of profit enormously. You don't have to do that much extra work, and it makes such a huge difference. I'm pretty sure that's something I learned from like you and Perry talking about, like go round it backwards, like kind of start at the end and kind of go back around it again. And if you listen to this podcast regularly, you have heard about order bumps and upsells. Oh my God, I do not shut up about them.
Right. But the lifetime value could, as I'm sure you've explained many times, the lifetime value can extend, beyond just order bumps and upsells and downsells. Like it can be, your follow-up email sequence. Do you stop emailing them after a certain period of time? Are you emailing people based on, recency, frequency, and monetary? In other words, your most active, buyers, are you sending them more communication? And then are you doing win-back campaigns? So if you have a subscription program and someone leaves, do you have a win-back campaign that you're sending out to people? Are you doing things like, cart saves? So some of those cross over into the conversion aspect, but I think you get the point that it's not just order bumps and upsells. It could be as simple as, honestly, especially when we're talking about online courses, could be just increasing your price. And so it could just be going into whatever checkout system you use and just saying, what if I charge $50 more for this? What if I, instead of charging $100 for this course, what if I charge $200? And you might be surprised. Your conversion rate might not change at all, and yet you're making a whole bunch more money. And so just that alone could be a huge win for you.
Nice. Okay. Deadlines. That's what we really need to make sure everybody needs to talk about, everybody needs to hear about. So you run Deadline Funnel. And so that's software that allows people to be able to have deadlines across all of their different marketing materials, emails, sales pages. It's like known as the de facto software in the industry. It's the one that like works the most reliably across all different systems that people are using. But not everybody knows even that they should use deadlines in the first place. That not everybody even understands that. So let's go right back to the beginning with it. Like, why do deadlines matter when you're selling courses?
Well, the reason why deadlines matter is because actually, I'm going to bring up an email that literally I got this morning from Pat Flynn, and he didn't send it just to me. He sent it out. And so it's an email, if you happen to be on Pat's list, it says, I made a bet with my son and taught him a lesson. And I'm not going to read the entire thing, but he talks about two examples, and he has screenshots from what I presume is his account. I'm pretty sure it is, showing one is a 7-day course sale where he made $102,000. And for that one, in the last 24 hours before the deadline, $59,000 or 57% of those sales came in. So well over half of those sales came in the last 24 hours. There was another one, which was a 3-day sale for $47,000. And in the last 24 hours, 76% of the sales during that promotion came in. So anyone who's ever done a launch or a holiday promotion or a flash sale, or any variation of that where there's a deadline, one of the things that you'll notice very quickly is that if you've been communicating your list, hey, you should be expecting something pretty soon. I'm releasing this thing, or we're doing a sale. You're going to have a surge of sales, and that's exciting. But then in the following days, typically it may not drop off a cliff, but it certainly goes down. But then once you start telling people, by the way, this promotion is coming to an end, the Black Friday sale is coming to an end, the Easter sale or whatever promotion it is that you're running is coming to an end, here's the deadline, all of a sudden sales just jump. And it's the highest amount of sales that you're going to receive during that promotion or during that launch. And so back when I was working with Perry, one of the thoughts that came to my mind was, what if we could do this evergreen? But not lie to people, because I certainly didn't invent the countdown timer, didn't invent the concept of having a deadline. But Perry has always been a big believer in setting up automated email systems. And so I thought, well, surely someone has figured out how to do this in a way where you don't just slap a cheap free countdown timer on your page and cross your fingers and hope that they don't come back the next day. What if we could actually have it where, based on when you became a lead in my system or when you got tagged in my system, my CRM, could we set up a deadline for a special offer that was legit, but it was just all automated and customized and personalized to you? I just assumed someone had figured this out, but the more I searched, the more I realized no one had. And so I set about to build it. And so that's how Deadline Funnel came to be. Yeah, so the power behind a deadline is that you get that burst of sales that you're not going to get if you just said, hey, here it is, and by the way, you can buy it at any time. You don't have a special offer unless there's a deadline, because if I can get it any time, literally any time, how can you call it special? It's your everyday offer. And so special offers with a deadline increase conversions. And a lot of times, back to the tactical triangle, you can set up regular promotions, whether they're evergreen or whether they're just on your calendar. You can set up promotions where you say, look, this is one of the highest ticket offerings that I have. So in other words, most expensive. And I only open the doors every so often per year. And then you do the promotion, you interact with your leads and with your new buyers, and then you have a deadline. And that, the combination of the high price and the high conversion can be one of the most effective things that you do, on a regular basis. So, sometimes people think that we're anti-launch, and we're not. It's just, you should have a mix. Another person, I mentioned Pat Flynn, another person, so he's a big fan of Deadline Funnel and he uses it. Another person that we all know is Amy Porterfield. She uses and talks about Deadline Funnel. And the reason why I bring her up in particular is because she has a sort of a portfolio of promotions. She has evergreen promotions going on in the background, but of course she also does, I think, quarterly launches, or some of her main products are like twice a year or 3 times a year. And so she has a mix. And so having that mix is a really, really healthy way for you to grow your business for a lot of reasons that we might get into, but I'll stop talking right there. That's the answer to why it's really important for you to have a deadline. It gets people to take action. As Pat pointed out, he literally says, unless there's a reason for a buyer to make a decision now, they won't. And that's from Pat Flynn's most recent email. And I truly, truly agree with that, is that if for most people, they're leaning into your message, they're clicking on your emails, they're watching your webinars or watching the replays, they're attending your live streams, but there's just that internal friction. And it's until you give them the deadline. The deadline doesn't convince someone who wasn't sold before, but it gets them to take action. Like, okay, I'm either in or I'm out. I have to make a decision. So, I was already leaning in this direction anyways. Okay, I'm in. And it gets them to commit.
It's funny you mentioned Amy Porterfield. Rita, who you probably know from my team, she used to do the Facebook ads for Amy Porterfield.
Yeah.
And did, multi-million-dollar launches. It was really interesting because Amy went from doing only evergreen to only launches. And then I think she's now gone back to like, okay, let's have a bit of a mix of these, which is totally what I prefer. Like, launches are amazing, but they're stressful. If they don't work and something goes wrong and you don't make the money and you're relying on it, it's like, oh my God. But if you have the evergreen stuff going on and you've always got money coming in, and then you do the launch and it's like the icing on the cake, it can just be fabulous.
Absolutely. And here's the other part of it, is that I also believe, so if someone is listening to this and they've done a launch, and then typically what they will do, most course creators go through this, we all have, that you'll take care of your clients, pat yourself on the back, and then you'll get to the point where you feel like, okay, I'm ready to do another launch, and I'll take what I learned from the last launch and I'll do another launch. And that goes well, hopefully. And then you do another one. But at some point you reach a point where it's like, okay, I can't be launching all the time. So like there has to be some space in between those. I'm not generating any extra revenue. So your business eventually will hit this threshold where, through a combination of just the stress and the work and the anxiety that it takes to actually run a launch, and also because you can't be launching all the time, or else it's not special. Through a combination of those factors, you hit a ceiling. But there's another component to this, and I'm not going to pretend that I'm an expert ad manager, but everything that I've heard, and it makes sense to me from Facebook side of things and Google side of things as well, is that if you've got a campaign that's working, let's say that you're doing a launch and you've just nailed it and you get it dialed in right, or it usually takes some time. And so maybe within the week that you started running the campaign, like you're like, okay, we finally got this thing dialed in, this thing's working, the launch ends, you're like, okay, shut it off and we'll turn it back on the next time we're doing a launch. Typically what happens is that when you go to turn it back on, the cost per click is completely different and not in your favor. The cost per lead is completely different and it's not in your favor. So typically what happens is that if you can keep your winning ads running, not only is it healthy for your business to constantly bringing in business and leads, that also gives you a great base and a great active subscriber base to launch to. So it makes your launches better, but also Facebook and Google, they reward you for that consistency by, yeah, your ad costs are going to go up, but it's not like they're going to change dramatically because you switch them off, because that's ad space that Facebook and Google are going to sell to someone else. And then you want to jump back in the queue and all of a sudden they're like, no, like we gave that to someone else. Here's the new pricing. So those are a lot of other reasons that people may not realize why having an evergreen, engine running underneath your business can really be super beneficial for your business when you go into the launch. So I'm very much in favor of doing launches, but if you already have this subscriber base that's growing day by day, week by week, and you have sales coming in, it also gives you the ability to have a much longer time horizon. When you want to hire that new copywriter, it's a lot more challenging when you're like, okay, I got to plan this around the cash flow for my launch because it's really seasonal. When you have revenue coming in all the time, you can make a lot more long-term decisions. And so that copywriter who's been working with you throughout the year, now they're working on your launch and they say, you know what, we can improve this launch copy. And so it's not spinning up, not just the marketing side, but like the infrastructure side behind the business. And so there's a whole bunch of reasons why what I sometimes call the Amy Porterfield approach of having the evergreen and the launches at the same time is a really, really, really healthy way to grow your course business. And you know what? If you're not there, if you just launched your first course or you're in your second or third launch, use the picture that I painted is something that you can grow into. And the sooner that you grow into that, the healthier your business will be. But it's okay. Everyone has to start somewhere, which typically is, hey, I've got this course, I did a launch. What next? Probably the answer is to do another launch and then start to evergreen some of the lead flow that you have. There's some really simple things that you can do as people join your email list for free that can help monetize some of the costs of your advertising on Facebook or Google so that you're not, going deep into your pockets in the lead up to the launch.
Okay. So we've talked through why it's really important to have deadlines, because people tend to take action right at the end when they know it's like, okay, I'm about to run out of time to do it. It doesn't get them to make the decision, but it gets them to make the decision now. We've talked about where that kind of fits in evergreen versus launches and why it can be tricky in evergreen to have something that works consistently and doesn't depend on someone just not going back to the page a day later. How do you use the deadlines? Are there like multiple places? Is it about just the sales page? I know that you guys have a system where you can put it in the emails as well. Like at what places can people put the deadline?
That's a great question. So there's a lot of places where you can do it. And we give our clients a lot of different ways that they can do it. I'll try to talk strategy, but I'll also mention a little bit about how our software works because it is unique. It works across whatever marketing stack or page building stack or checkout page stack that you have, all of the things. Sometimes I say that we're sort of the Zapier. I don't know if it's Zapier or Zapier, but whichever one you prefer. We're the Zapier of urgency. Like we integrate with all of it. So, and I've got a fantastic team that's there to support you. And if you have questions, et cetera. So you can put them on I'll just run through a quick list. So you can put them on the sales pages. You can put deadlines on most of your checkout pages. It really kind of depends on, there's a few platforms such as Teachable, for example, doesn't allow anyone's code, whether it's a Facebook pixel or Google Tag Manager, like they just don't allow anyone's code on their checkout page. You can still use it. We have a lot of clients who use Deadline Funnel with Teachable very effectively, but you have to be able to add code somewhere for the software to do its job. but we work on things like Samcart and Thrivecart and, Infusionsoft and all those different checkout page platforms. So a lot of the most popular ones. You can have, as you mentioned, countdowns in the emails. But the other thing is that it's not just, so when you think deadlines, you might be thinking, okay, I've seen these, I've seen countdowns and things like that. And yes, that's a big core of what we offer, both in the emails and on the sales pages. However, we also give people the ability to do some other really cool things, such as to personalize in the actual body of the email what their deadline is. So you might be on my email sequence, John, and it says, hey, John, I want to make sure that you take action because midnight tonight, Pacific US time, September 7th, that's the deadline. That's the point at which, like, if you hit the snooze button one more time, you're not going to get this anymore. So having that, your specific deadline in the email communicates to you, hey, look, this is not, some sort of trick here. This is actually the deadline. So please don't hit the snooze button. And I want to emphasize, in case anyone missed this part, this is not, hey, here's how to use some fancy copywriting and a little bit of technology to trick people. We're communicating that this is a real deadline because, in fact, it is a real deadline. And so by putting the text in there, you're communicating, look, don't hit the snooze button because you will miss out. You can do the same thing on the sales page. So in addition to having the countdown, you can have the person, like, doors closed, like in the actual text of your sales page, like, this offer is good. This offer, you can get this offer until, September 7th at 11:59 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So whatever that specific deadline is, we have the ability to do quantity-based evergreen deadlines or quantity-based. It doesn't have to be evergreen. It could be a fixed date. So a great use for that would be on, say, webinars. So fast action bonuses, like the first 10 people that take action on this, I'm going to throw in this extra bonus. So there have been other thought leaders, Brian Harris being one of them, who have really done elaborate breakdowns of what they did in the launch and what worked and what didn't. And one of the things that is, this is going back several years, but it's still as true today as it was then. One of the things that he found, and he documented, yes, on, my highest day of sales was on the last day, thanks to the deadline. What he did in one of his launches that he wrote about is that he had a fast action bonus deadline in the middle of his launch. And so he saw a peak, a jump in sales in the middle of that launch. And then it tapered off again and then peaked back again for that final deadline. And so that's another really, really powerful way to do it, is you don't have to have just one deadline. You can have a fast action bonus and you can have a, like, hey, this thing is closing down. And there's a whole bunch of other different ways. One of my favorite ways to tell course creators to use a deadline, this is not the only way, there's lots of ways, but one of my favorites is to have a special deal that where it's not, if you don't purchase this, you can't get it until we open it back up again. But yeah, you can go and get this at any time. Go check out our website. Here's the price. But right now, you save X amount of dollars and you get these extra 3 bonuses. So sure, you don't have to buy right now. It's available anytime. But this is a special deal. And the reason why I'm giving you a special deal is because you attended the live stream, you've been clicking on the emails, you're a new subscriber. You can come up with whatever the reason is. It doesn't have to be elaborate, but by giving someone a reason to take action now, all the people who are leaning into your message, who normally would be like, oh, well, you know what, I'll wait, they're going to take action. And that makes a huge difference to your bottom line, because before I got into the online world, I was in face-to-face selling. And there's an old adage, there's a lot of them, but one of them is the delay of the sale is the death of the sale. So in other words, if I'm, in your home and I'm trying to sell you an alarm system, which is not what I used to sell, but like as an example, and you're like, well, you know what, this all sounds good, Jack, but you know what, I need to talk to my partner and I'll get back to you, in a few days. It's pretty likely that the longer that goes on before I hear back from you, the less likely it is that you're actually going to follow through and pull the trigger. Usually we're just, we're like, oh, I need to think about it. But really inside, you're just looking for an excuse. Like the easiest thing, our natural mode as human beings, like it or not, is inaction. Like, I don't know, like, should I think it probably goes back to it. This is a little bit of me theorizing out loud, but it probably goes back to prehistoric days. Like, okay, do I look behind that rock? I don't know. I don't know what's behind there. Maybe I should just stay put, until I actually know that I need to do something and take action. So there's, I think, sort of wired into us that if the status quo isn't so bad that I have to make an immediate change right now, then it's safer to stay put. And so we need that extra push, and that extra push is where the deadline comes in.
Nice. Okay. So we've got a couple of options. We can either do a scarcity-based deadline or an urgency-based deadline, or both. So it can be there's a limited number available. It could be that there's a specific time when it runs out, or you can have both of them. You can have the fast action bonus partway through the promotion, which gives you a spike in the middle. We can have the deadlines on the sales page, on the checkout page, and in the emails. And actually, we did a test on this. We ran a test on putting in the deadline in the email versus just having it on the sales page on a few different campaigns. And we found it gave an increase of, it was somewhere around 6 to 8% increase in total sales from having it with like an A/B split between the two of them. We've talked about the fact that everyone needs to be genuine. It needs to be at the end of that deadline, that price is going up or the bonuses are going away. Is there anything else that people need to, where people get stuck with using deadlines, where they don't want to use it, they're uncomfortable, that kind of thing?
Yeah. So I'll give a few best practices. So I'll answer this in two parts. There's a few best practices, and then I'll mention some areas where people mentally get stuck. So one best practice, and not a lot of people make this mistake, but we see it sometimes, is that if you make the deadline too long and you focus on the deadline. So for example, if you make it like, hey, the deadline is 21 days. And so I just signed up for your thing. Like, hey, I just want to make sure that you know the deadline is 21 days. And I see a countdown and it's counting backwards from 21. It actually would have the opposite effect. When someone is going through an automated email sequence, whether that's part of a webinar, a launch, or whatever, talking about the deadline is really something you want to do closer to the deadline, not day one, like, hey, thanks for joining. By the way, there's this promotion and there's a deadline on it. Like I would, and really the one exception to that would be if you are doing like an upsell after a first purchase, or you can even do a low price offer, sometimes known as a tripwire, after an opt-in. So someone opts in for free and there's a low price thing. So it's got to be typically a low price. What low means, I'm doing air quotes, what low means in your market really just depends. Like you have to know for your market what low is. But that would be something where you could put like a short 12-minute video, and maybe a 12 to 15-minute deadline. But if it's multiple days, you really want to make sure that you're not talking about the deadline until like, let's say 72 hours before the deadline. Now, the other thing that you can do with our software, by the way, is that you can have all of your pages, all your checkout pages, all your landing pages have the deadline on it, but you can hide it until the 72 hours there when your emails start to talk about it. So our system takes that into account. So if you've got a 21-day, like someone starts and you're like, okay, 21 days from now, we actually do want to have a deadline for this, you can still have everything waiting to become active right about the time that you're like, hey, by the way, if you've been watching these videos and clicking the emails and attending our live streams, now's the time to take action, because in 3 days, this is going away. That's one best practice. The other one, which is really, really powerful, and it's I'll speed things up, it's a lot quicker to explain, is to simply send 3 emails on the day of the deadline. Whether it's a live launch, whether it's an evergreen, this is one of those times where if you live by some sort of rule in your mind where I can only email people at maximum once a day, if that is a rule that you have in your head, you want to violate that rule on the day of the deadline. Because people snooze, people wait. And I don't know about you, but it's happened to me a lot of times where I literally have snooze, like I'm the deadline guy. But if you don't remind me multiple times on the last day, I typically will like not take action on that first email. I will appreciate the fact that you've told me, by the way, second reminder, last reminder, your sales will go up tremendously when you do this. And I think Pat mentions this in his email, and he probably, if he didn't get the idea from me, I've certainly emphasize it to him and to his audience when I've been on his podcast. So send 3 emails. I've never had anyone come back to me and say, I wish I hadn't followed that advice. Like it's one of those few things that I can say, I can't imagine it not working. Number 1, have a deadline on your special promotion. Number 2, send 3 emails. And people who buy, by the way, are not going to see those extra emails because you should be putting them on the onboarding list. Switching over to the second part of the question where, like, what do people sometimes get mentally tripped up about? I think a lot of people confuse automated with real. Like, okay, well, if it's automated, it can't be real. And in my mind, it's real cut and dry. Like it's real if what you say in your emails and on your webpage and on your checkout page is in fact what happens. So going back to when years and years and years ago, when I created Deadline Funnel, at the time, there was no way to make these things real because you would have a deadline on the page. And if someone happened to come back the next day, lo and behold, the deadline has reset. So that wasn't real, even though it was kind of automated. This is real. It's tied into the person's record in your database. And so it is, in fact, real. The fact that it's automated is no more phony than you having an email series where people are signing up at any point during the year and you have a series of emails going out to them rather than you sitting down and writing each one every single day. I think another area where people sometimes get tripped up is, they're like, oh, well, my market is, too sophisticated. They won't fall for that. And, first of all, the I won't fall for that, again, this is not a marketing trick. This is one of the key things of just how we're wired. We don't take action, at least the majority of us don't take action unless there's a deadline, unless there's a reason to do it now. So Black Friday consistently works. Amazon's biggest sales day is on their Amazon Prime Day. That's when they break all their sales records. So regardless of what market it is, whether it's B2B, whether it's brick and mortar, having a deadline increases sales, period. So it's not a matter of tricking your audience. It's about having a special promotion and then having a deadline to let people know this is the reason why you should take action right now. So those are a few of the things that I think sometimes trip people up.
Okay. So if someone's sold at this point, they're convinced this is a good idea, that they should be doing it. They know where they can put all the deadlines. We know that they need to have 3 emails on the last day. And by the way, I had someone on the podcast today so we always do 2 emails on the last day. I had someone come on the other day who does 5. And I was like, oh, I've just found where my line is about being uncomfortable about it. And the way he does it, what he does is he has in every email the option to opt out if you don't want to get any more emails from him about that particular promotion. So very much in the kind of Andre Chaperon approach of like, okay, you can get off this specific list about this specific promotion. And so he's like, there's 2 groups of people who are left at the end. There's the ones who don't open the emails. Well, they're not seeing it anyway. That doesn't matter. And there's the ones who are on the cusp, who are opening the emails, have decided not to opt out and are still thinking about buying. So it's like, so on the last day, I'm sending them 5 different things, different angles about why they probably should go and take action. I was like, wow, okay. We could try that out. 5, yeah. 3's an easier move from where we are at the moment. We could give that a go.
Yeah, I'm not trying to one-up you, but there's a copywriter named Ben Settle, and I don't think he does this with every promotion, but when he used to do client work, he was in the golf market, and I think he did something like 15 emails on the last day. I mean, it was just really aggressive. Now, I'm not saying, therefore, go and do that, but I don't know if this came out in your conversation with this other person, but I'd be willing to. So I've heard kind of the same thing from another thought leader named Todd Brown. And what he says is that even with 5 emails, every single email that they're sending out is generating yet more sales. And so you can draw, like whoever's listening to this, you can draw the line wherever you're comfortable. But I'm telling you, if you draw the line at, nope, listen, my market's different. I'm only going to send 1 email and that should do it. I'm telling you, you're leaving sales on the table. At least do what John does and at least send a second email. If you're not going to do 11, you're not going to do 5, you're not going to do 3, for goodness sakes, please do 2, at least 2.
Nice. Okay, cool. What else have I not asked you around deadlines that people should know? What else is there that people should be aware of?
Well, I think knowing some of what you teach your audience, I think there are some really, really easy places where people can start to use deadlines. This is certainly not the exhaustive list of all the places where you should put it, but you talk about bumps and you talk about upsells and downsells. And so upsells and downsells is a really powerful place, to put it. And so if you've got like a 12-minute video, or if your offer takes roughly 10 to 12 minutes for someone to comprehend and make like that, oh, yeah, I think I want this type of decision, having that deadline there is really powerful. Having the deadline on the order page. So if you're doing a launch having that deadline there, especially in the last 72 hours, is really, really powerful and super, super simple for you to do. Another area which I would highly recommend that people try would be on that thank you page after the opt-in. So for example, if you're selling a course, so here's something practical and tactical that everyone can do. If you do it correctly, and I'm going to explain it, this should not hurt your overall sales whatsoever. It's just going to benefit you, and it will help you to segment your list. I think you're going to find that the people that take action on what I'm about to explain will be your best source of buyers, not your only source, but your best source. So as people opt in on the thank you page, you can have a video that says, hey, of the 13, I teach the course on like how to negotiate. I'm making this up on the spot, how to negotiate. And it's got 13 modules and it's over, 150 hours. But the favorite section is how to negotiate when you're on the car lot, say, or how to negotiate for a raise. And this is one of the most effective ones, and people love this all the time. And I get the rave reviews on it. Normally, you can only get it as being part of, one of my clients in this course. I'll be telling you more about that in the coming days, but I want to let you know, if you would love to have that right now, what I will do, and it's on this page and this page only, before the countdown runs out, I will give it to you for $29, and so I really want you to be able to see the quality of the content that you get. And I'm going to send you this free extra 1-page sheet, which is like something that I normally don't give out, that covers X, Y, and Z. So I can't wait for you to, put this to use. And I think it's going to put dollars in your pocket right away that you can then use to, buy the rest of my stuff. And so something like that, where essentially put the copy aside for a second that I just, did off the top of my head. But the concept is to take a piece of the bigger thing that you're selling and to turn that into a fast action order that someone can take advantage of as soon as they opt in. And then what I would do is I would tag them as having purchased that. And even if you don't do anything else immediately, the next step would then be to look a month later and see, okay, how did that convert? And then also take a look at, did I get more course sales from the people that purchased that than people who didn't? Because that would be a really powerful, so now you could start to segment your list, and you might send different emails based on whether they took the offer or didn't take the offer. But one of the powerful things about that is that if you are advertising on Facebook or Google, it's a great way for you to monetize some of the ad cost. You're probably not going to, neutralize your entire ad spend, but if you can essentially take your ad cost and shave 10% off or 15% off or 50% off, that would be a huge, huge win and give you the ability to reinvest more into your Facebook ads. And when you're testing new Facebook ad campaigns or Google AdWords campaigns or YouTube ads, that's an early top of funnel proxy to determine like, okay, how is this converting? So if you're testing new creative, or you're taking something from Facebook and you try it on Google, an early test, like if you've got a 14-day funnel, an early test would be, okay, but how is that converting from opt-in to that, that low priced offer? And so that's another great way for you to quickly test things, to A/B test different offers and things like that.
Nice. Yeah, totally agree. Couldn't agree more. It's unlikely in our experience when you're doing a front-end tripwire funnel that it actually covers their cost, but it can cover a bunch of it. And that just makes everything so much easier. Yeah. Beautiful.
Absolutely.
All right, cool. Well, hopefully, as you're listening to this, you are now convinced about deadlines. You are sure that this is something you should be doing. You know where you need to be putting them. There's a whole long list of stuff, but just get started with some of the easier ones. Now, if someone wants to go sign up, if they're like, great, I need the software, I need to go get Deadline Funnel, where can they go? They
can go to deadlinefunnel.com. We've got a 14-day free trial. And during that free trial, you can use all the features and test them out. My team is there to help you. In addition, when this comes out, so John, I'll need your team to let me know when this goes live on all the podcast networks. But what we'll do is all you have to do is sign up in the first week and just contact my team and say, hey, I'm one of the people who was listening to John and Jack talk about deadlines. I heard I could get a free month. So my team will give you a free month for everyone who signs up in that first week. And so I'm just going to base it based off of when this goes live on podcast. So another reason for listeners to subscribe so that they don't miss out on special deals like this. So yeah, just contact my team and we'll happily give you an extra free month. So that's on top of the 14 days that you already have.
Boom. All right. Gives you a chance to make a bunch of money out of it and try it out. Sweet.
Absolutely.
If you found the interview useful and you want to get future episodes, subscribe wherever you listened. And as always, thanks so much for listening. We appreciate your time. We hope it's been really useful. If you loved the episode, then drop us an email, john@datadrivenmarketing.co, and tell me what you've enjoyed about it. And Jack, thanks so much for coming on, man. Really appreciate your time, sharing your wisdom with everybody.
Yeah, thanks for the invite. I've really enjoyed it.